Breaking Up with Addiction is proudly supported by experts you can trust. Kindbridge Behavioral Health, safe, non-judgmental counseling, just a tap away. Welcome to Breaking Up with Addiction. I'm Gwendolyn Boyd McGee, licensed professional clinical counselor, and we will be joined later by Coach Corinne Wright, certified executive coach. Before we dive into today's episode, listeners, we assigned you homework. Were you able to complete it? I certainly hope so, because being able to identify what kind of gambler you are can be the first step into finding solutions and starting on your road to recovery. In this crucial episode of Breaking Up with Addiction, we explore relapse prevention, which is a vital component of sustaining long-term recovery from gambling addiction. Understanding how to prepare for and respond to things like triggers, cravings, and high-risk situations is essential for maintaining progress. So in today's episode, we will provide practical steps for creating a relapse prevention plan. We will offer resources to strengthen your recovery and share some very valuable insights to help you stay on track when you're faced with challenges. We will also explore some common myths that prevent people from taking effective action. Listeners, you're going to leave this episode with concrete tools to apply in your recovery. So what triggers relapse? Relapse doesn't just happen overnight. It's a process. I would like to provide a scenario for you, a hypothetical. So we have Justin. Justin is white, in his mid-30s, college educated. Justin started doing some sports betting and became really intrigued with it, maybe a little bit too much. So he ran into some challenges and came to terms with the fact that he has disordered gambling. He was honest with his girlfriend, which actually she was really supposed to be his fiance. He had plans on proposing to her, but being that he doesn't have it or have any money, that's been way too difficult for him. So Justin's decided to just concentrate on him and his recovery. His girlfriend is extremely supportive. He went to Kindbridge Behavioral Health, worked with a coach, followed all of the suggestions, the curriculum, utilizes resources, and learned skills for his recovery. In addition to this, Justin attends Celebrate Recovery and also goes to Gamblers Anonymous. So Justin has achieved sustained remission from gambling disorder, which means that he has abstained from gambling for 12 months. Justin receives a text message from a family member informing him that they are planning a family reunion in the next few months and they want to hold it at Atlantic City. So Justin is very torn because he enjoys spending time with his family, especially since he has all this extra time now because he's no longer gambling. And he really doesn't want to miss the family reunion. So he starts to think about, am I strong enough? Do I feel that going to Atlantic City could potentially trigger me? So he talks to a few of his family members and he decides that he comes up with a plan. He wants to make sure that he stays in the areas where there's not gambling happening, maybe some shops, restaurants, other things. So Justin goes to the family reunion. The first night, they have a dinner. He goes to the dinner, has a wonderful time, orders a few drinks. Most people, are having cocktails. And when dinner is completed, one of his family members says, "Hey, we're going over to the casino. We're going to go gamble a little bit. So there it is. Justin is faced with this decision. So Justin decides, hey, I'm not going to gamble. And my issue is sports betting, right? So I'm going to stay away from any areas where there's betting, just stay over in the casino, card games, other things that I'm really not interested in. So Justin follows his family members. They go to a blackjack table. Several of them sit there. They're gambling, winning, laughing, having fun. He's standing there witnessing all of this. And after a while, he starts to get a little itch. He's like thinking in his mind, oh, well, I'll just play with $20. And I don't usually gamble with, cards. So this shouldn't be a problem for me, right? So Justin sits there and he starts playing blackjack, winning, having a few more drinks, winning some more, winning until he's not winning anymore. And he's losing and he's losing. And so Justin has no money, but still wants to play. So there it is. He goes to the ATM machine, and I think we can all kind of know how this story ends. It's unfortunate, but this is just one example of how relapse can occur. One thing that Justin should have been a little bit more mindful about is that since he was under the impression that because he had been sports betting, that he wouldn't be triggered by watching a game of blackjack. But we saw how that worked out. And remember, gambling is gambling is gambling. So there are several stages leading up to relapse. And being able to identify these signs early is crucial in preventing it. Some of the common triggers that I would like to look at include stress, emotional distress, environmental cues, and social influences. And let's start off with some common triggers for relapse include stress, emotional distress, environmental cues, and social influences. I'd like to begin looking at stress because it's something that most people have to deal with at one point in their life. Statistics show that it's something that some people deal with quite often. Stress is a physiological and psychological response that occurs when we perceive a real or imagined threat, or maybe a challenging situation. Stress can trigger physiological changes, including the release of stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline. And this can leave us feeling worried, tense, irritable, and overwhelmed. And I remember reading research about cortisol, and it indicated that when it's released, it can actually shrink the brain. And that doesn't sound good. No, we don't want that. No shrunken brains. Stress is common, like I said, in everyday life, and it can come from different areas in your life. It could be work-related pressures, personal relationships, definitely financial issues, especially when it pertains to disordered gambling, health concerns, or other life circumstances. Let's be real. These days, we're not sure what we may face when we wake up, but it's important that we come up with a plan and implement tools, valuable tools that you will be learning later from Coach Corinne Wright, so that you can manage this stress effectively and avoid a relapse. Emotional distress is really like stress coupled with negative emotions. So, what are some of these negative emotions? Anger, sadness, fear, which can be positive in some circumstances, anxiety, guilt, jealousy, loneliness, disgust, shame, regret. Any of these things, I mean, you're dealing with these things internally, and it can cause a tremendous amount of stress, which could lead to a potential relapse if you're not doing the things that you need to do, not utilizing the tools, the coping skills, the mechanisms that we have talked about on earlier episodes. Let's look at environmental cues. And the first thing that comes to mind for me is all the advertisements. Clients are consistently sharing with me that they feel like they're being bombarded by all of the advertisements on TV surrounding the sporting events. And there are, of course, billboards in various places. Or maybe it's that you can't pass by the place, the casino, where you gambled at previously. Maybe you need to find a new way to go home and on purpose not pass there because that could be a trigger. And what about social influences? Well, look at Justin. I mean, the influence came from his family members, but still, that's a social influence. It's important to look at the people in your life. Will you be okay still hanging out with your buddies who were doing the sports betting, or your sister who consistently wants to go to the casino? It is very important that you maintain strict boundaries with the people in your life so that you are not triggered and end up in a relapse. Remember, listeners, relapse prevention is all about being prepared and creating a solid support network. It's time for trivia. So today's trivia question is, what is the most common reason for relapse in gambling addiction? So your choices include A, inability to cope with stress, B, lack of support, C, poor self-care habits. So I'm hoping that after I have given you all this information, I hope that you chose letter A for the inability to cope with stress. It makes sense that stress and anxiety would be a major trigger because we've talked to you about how many people use gambling as a way to actually cope with stress and anxiety. And when the emotions are really, really high, the urge to gamble can just be completely overwhelming for them. One of the options is poor self care habits. While we feel like good self care is extremely important, it can help with improving your self esteem, your confidence, your self efficacy, but it doesn't have the strong effect that stress and anxiety does. Now, with poor self care habits, you may lose some friends, you may have some challenges in the socialization area, but yeah, it would not have the same effect as stress and anxiety. And what about lack of support? Support is extremely important in recovery. There are those people who are extremely motivated and with the tools, coping skills, coping mechanisms, and resources, they are able to recover. Some of them may feel that the whole support with like Gamblers Anonymous, Smart Recovery, Celebrate Recovery may not be for them. And there are those people who have been able to recover. While I'm glad they were, as a professional, I highly recommend the other things like Gamblers Anonymous, Celebrate Recovery, Smart Recovery, whatever it is, having that support, being involved in a group that of people who maybe can understand your journey and what your challenges are, it can be extremely effective in recovery. An important strategy in avoiding a relapse is creating a structured routine. I work with my clients on doing this, implementing things into their daily routine that are conducive for their recovery. A structured daily routine provides the stability And it actually reduces the opportunities for you to even think about gambling. Scheduling regular activities such as work. Oh, yes, I highly recommend work, hobbies, and self care. It can help people in recovery to be more engaged and more focused on the positive habits that they're building. This approach not only minimizes idle time, but it also encourages the development of new interests and new skills. Now that we've covered some of the major triggers and strategies to prevent relapse, I'll hand it over to Corinne to discuss the mental tools and coping strategies that you can use to stay strong in recovery.
Thank you, Gwen. Now let's talk about the mental tools needed to prevent relapse. One key strategy is to change the way we think about recovery. Recovery is like building a house after a storm. You don't just patch the roof and hope for the best. That's like trying to quit without any support. No, you strengthen the foundation, reinforce the walls, and redesign the space so it's safer, healthier, and more aligned with the life you want to live. It's an intentional, ongoing process that requires vision, maintenance, and a shift in mindset. Instead of focusing on what you're avoiding, like relapse itself, recovery becomes more about what you're building, a life that doesn't rely on harmful patterns to cope, connect, or feel whole. It's not just about stopping a behavior. It's about reclaiming your power, learning new ways to handle discomfort, and choosing what kind of person you want to be. Recovery is not a straight line. It is a winding road full of trying, potential relapse, triggers, cleaning up your character, changing your behavior, breaking trust, repairing trust, changing people, places, and things, and creating healthy boundaries. But keep in mind, recovery isn't punishment. It's an upgrade, a personal transformation that includes setbacks and growth, and the daily decision to show up for yourself in a new way. So think about recovery as just that, an upgrade. What kind of affirmation can you say to yourself daily to remind yourself what recovery is and what it means to you? It's not just about avoiding triggers, but also about embracing a new mindset. This includes shifting from a survival mentality to a growth one. Reframe the way we view setbacks and understand that they are a part of the process, not the end of the journey. A setback can look like slipping into an old habit and saying to yourself, I knew I couldn't do this. I failed again. What's the point of even trying anymore? They see the setbacks as proof that they do not have the strength, and they start to spiral thinking recovery is impossible. Now, a growth mentality from the same person who experiences a slip or a relapse says, this is a tough moment, but now I know what triggered it. I'll talk about it in my next session with my coach, therapist, or accountability partner and adjust my plan. This doesn't erase my progress. It's a part of my journey. If you look at the way the survival mentality express themselves versus the growth mentality, that's the difference between survival and growth. What's the conversation in your head? Start addressing that first. Choose the growth mentality every time the survivor in you shows up. Choose to grow that survivor. Develop that survivor. Build resilience for that survivor that lives in you. Because managing our thoughts consists of us driving that conversation in our head to where we want it to go, not sitting back and allowing it to drive us into more sadness, more shame, more guilt. Setbacks don't mean you're broken. They mean you're learning. Every challenge reveals something valuable about your patterns, your needs, or your support system. Growth doesn't happen in a straight line. It happens in the bounce back. 3 tools you can implement immediately. These are actionable tools that cost you nothing but effort. One is, like we said, to reframe the setbacks as learning experiences. One, as we've already addressed, is reframing setbacks as learning experiences. When you face a challenge or mistake, Look for the lesson and write it down so you can track not only your challenges, but also address what needs to be refined, reinforced. Another is daily affirmations and positive self-talk. Consistently remind yourself that you are worthy of recovery and success. You have the ability to keep going, and you are on a journey of recovery. And last, but most definitely not least, building a relapse prevention plan. Have a plan for how to respond when temptation or negative emotions arise. But it's more than just about having a plan. The most important part of having a relapse prevention plan is implementing that plan in times of need. This includes having a trusted friend or support group to reach out to. A relapse prevention plan can be short and to the point or very in-depth and detailed. I want to share with you the essentials, must-haves for an effective relapse prevention plan. Many of these elements align with guidelines from the National Council on Problem Gambling and Gamblers Anonymous relapse prevention resources. There are 8 essentials that I will share with you. And if you or someone you are supporting is in need of a relapse prevention plan, I want to offer you a moment to pause here and grab something to write with. First, and we've talked about this 1,000 times, but now we're putting all this into place to develop you a plan. Identifying your triggers. That's clearly define internal stress, boredom, loneliness, and external places, people, events. What are the things that trigger you? And then we talked about coping strategies. In fact, if you are someone who's struggling to find coping strategies to explore what they are, please visit BUWA EP4. That's Breaking Up with Addiction, episode 4, which is all about coping mechanisms. Here, you want to list healthy alternatives for handling your urges, exercising, calling accountability partners, journaling, whatever the things are that are your go-tos. You want to make sure they are intentional go-tos. We've talked about things like mindfulness techniques and visualization exercises, which I absolutely love. With visualization, you can close your eyes or you can treat it like a daydream with your eyes open and just take yourself to where you want to be instead of where you currently are when it comes to the thoughts and the emotions that are happening as a part of the urge to gamble. And in some cases, we recommend that you play the bad tape as a coping mechanism, reminding yourself of what happened the last time things went really bad to avoid making this mistake again. So now we are at number 3 on our relapse prevention plan. We've identified our triggers. We've established a coping mechanism. And now we need to develop a support network. Identify key support contacts, mentors, coaches, accountability partners, family members. Who can you call in high-risk moments? Build an alliance with your accountability circle where you may need to text these people in the middle of the night or make a phone call at a random time of day. Who can you reach out to between the trigger and the action? And let's be honest, whether you're at a casino or using apps to gamble, you're going to use your hands. So why not use your hands to text or call that supportive network before taking the action to relapse? That's the crossroad of choice. And it's always hard. It's very hard, but it is also possible. Next is self-monitoring tools. We've talked about this 1,000 times as well, using things like journals, habit trackers, or other apps to monitor your cravings, moods, and gambling urges. Some types of self-monitoring can be more essential than others, but all forms of self-monitoring are beneficial for you. And it can be as simple as you writing down what's going on. Writing it down allows you to capture when you're triggered and what's triggering you. It can also allow you time to sit with what you need, what coping mechanisms work for you and which ones don't. And then an emergency plan. This is in the time of your relapse where you are out of your element. You are not in your day-to-day and something has happened to trigger you and you're probably not really thinking about what you need to do as much as you're thinking about how you feel. The emergency plan needs to be a step-by-step actionable guide for what you do when the urge is overwhelming. Things like leave the location, contact someone, or use a delay technique to get your mind off of the gambling. This could be as simple as you texting that accountability partner talked about before you gamble, before the action, changing your environment immediately if necessary. If you're in the wrong place and it's really not somewhere where you're feeling like you can beat the urge, leave. Applying a 20-minute delay rule for yourself where you say, hey, I'm having the urge. Let me set a timer on my phone and let me not gamble until that timer goes off if I must. But that's just really mentally shifting you out of the urge to gamble and into a space where you can actually think. That's what that 20 minutes should be used for, to think your way away from gambling and not to think about, I'm really giving myself 20 minutes to gamble. Use this time to breathe, walk, or journal if you don't feel like thinking, because sometimes thinking may be overwhelming for you if you have a situation that's really taking you out of your element. The idea is to use that time wisely. These are tangible things that can work for you if you apply them. Thinking about them will not produce results, but applying them will. And next, what kinds of financial safeguards will you implement now? Not at the time when you're triggered, but now. Limiting access to money. Use cash allowances, trusted money managers. That could be people in your life or certain types of accounts, blocks on gambling sites. And if you use an app to block yourself on a site, make sure that you're not the one who holds the password to unblock yourself, or technically you have not blocked yourself from the site. Self-exclusion is also something that you can do to prevent yourself from being able to gamble in casinos as well. So you can self-exclude online. What kind of financial plan will you put in place to create a gap between where you are and the harm gambling can cause? And now let's talk about your routine and purpose, because we all need structure and purpose in order to thrust us forward in life. And if you feel like you don't have purpose and you don't have a routine, life can feel really hard. Try to maintain a structure with meaningful daily activities, goals, and responsibilities that reinforce a recovery-focused lifestyle. Recovery is not something you punish yourself with until you get it. It is a lifestyle. It is literally, how do I want my life to look and feel day by day, especially as I'm recovering? So make sure your plan reflects who you are as a person and what it will take for you to be consistent. And lastly, affirmations and reminders. Keeping visible reminders or personal reasons for recovery and affirmations close to you, that those things can really keep you grounded. Pictures of loved ones, a real vision board. And I don't mean just throwing pictures on a piece of a poster. I mean a true vision board outlined with what your goals are, where you want to go, what you want to do, how you plan to get there. Those visual reminders of what the life can look like on the other side of gambling and loss. They will draw your thoughts into the right thinking, and affirmations can provide reinforcement for what's possible to help combat the negative self-talk associated with triggers. These elements will help you to build a strong, proactive defense against relapse and help reinforce lasting behavioral changes. The relapse prevention plan must be written down. If it's only existing in your head, now it has a harder job because it has to, how are we going to differentiate the difference between the relapse prevention plan and the gambling addiction and thoughts that come along with it? So that's why it must be written down. Writing it down gives it somewhere to live when you need to reach for it, and it allows you the opportunity to edit when needed. In addition to keeping your relapse prevention plan in your phone for easy access, a good way to remember your relapse prevention plan is to think of it in terms of an intro, body, and conclusion. The intro would be recognizing your triggers. The body would be the application of what you do when you are triggered. And the conclusion is what happens after the trigger. Successful or not, journal about what happened to either learn more about your addiction, which helps you to know what type of help or accountability you really need. If successful, celebrate that win and share it with someone. Please share it. If unsuccessful, take accountability and use what you've learned to strengthen your relapse prevention plan. Just to recap, these 8 things that you need to put in a relapse prevention plan: being able to identify triggers, coping strategies for the triggers, a support network, self-monitoring tools, an emergency plan, financial safeguards, routine and purpose, and affirmations and reminders of who you are and where you're going on your journey. Your homework for this week is simple but powerful. I want you to create a relapse prevention plan for yourself, whether it's short and sweet or extensive and drawn out. Make sure that no matter how short and sweet it is, that it has components of the elements we've talked about today. And if you already have a relapse prevention plan, then the goal would be to make sure that plan is reinforced. Whenever there is a relapse, the first thing to do is to go and look for where did I fall short in my plan. And sometimes you'll find that it's the falling short happened because you probably did not reach for the plan when you were triggered in the first place. And that's okay. That is information. That means you have to answer the question, how do I close the gap between trigger and relapse? Where do you need to make changes to pull that plan forward? And this is why we push and urge for you to have it accessible on your phone. Because if you're using apps to gamble and your relapse prevention plan is in that phone, now we're at the choice crossroad again. We're creating choices for you in this process to give you the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to choose. Relapse is not a failure. It is a part of the journey. What matters is how you respond and the tools you put in place to keep moving forward. Recovery is not about being perfect. It's about the progress and consistency. So keep going. And remember, addiction doesn't define you. And breaking up with addiction doesn't have to be a solo mission. KindBridge Behavioral Health offers safe, non-judgmental support anytime from anywhere. Visit kindbridge.com/appointments and start getting the help you deserve today.